What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our podcast this week. I am Ashley, and I'm here with Tiara. We're so excited to have you guys back. And great news. Or maybe kind of bad news. We are still on the hunt for a name. So right now, it's still the Brown Gyal Diary podcast. But we did get some suggestions, so I'll read some of them. The Wind Down, Spicy Chat, The Pepper Pot, Spill the Chai, Emotional Fete, and Juve Enclave. Am I reading that?
I think so. Enclave,
yeah,
something like that.
Juve Enclave. So yeah, we're there. We're going and we're figuring it out. So there's still time to submit names for our podcast. We do have a prize. So it's a beautiful Brown Gyal Diary basket, and make sure you guys comment some ideas in the comment section.
Let us know if you liked any of those ones that we named as well. We'll see which ones maybe get the most votes.
Or use that as like your inspo.
As inspo, but definitely drop some more ideas because the search continues. And we are hoping to get that name down sooner than later. So this way, we can...
So you guys can literally search something.
So you can have something a little more distinguished here. But yeah.
Well, we have like a super packed podcast. We have an amazing guest that a lot of you probably already know, have met, have read her book. Why don't you introduce her?
So today we have Saira joining us. I think a lot of you may know Saira from her book, Dear Divya. We are going to be talking about a ton of, just like a very packed, like Ashley said, a very packed episode of very heavy topics. So just throwing that disclaimer out right now too is like there may be some moments where you need to pause, step away. So please take time for yourself if you feel that you need to, or if anything may perhaps be triggering. So just putting that out there. But without further ado, I want to introduce Saira again and just maybe like give us a little bit about yourself and what you do for anyone who's not familiar.
You were said your name, your title, and all that good stuff.
Okay, amazing. So, hi, I'm Saira. Before I begin, I just really want to say thank you for creating this platform for us, for our voices to be heard. I think it's something to say that it's not really in existence right now, and this is something different, and it's for our community, and it's benefiting our community by hearing real voices and real stories. So I want to say thank you to you both.
No, I want to say thank you to you because you've been our supporter from like day one. Your name in my phone is still Saira Joggers because she bought our jogging pants. Your name in my phone is literally still Saira Joggers. Okay?
Oh man, I remember when you I remember being on your podcast, doing a live with you all.
With Narosha.
Yes.
Awesome.
For the Father's Day live.
I still remember listening to that.
Ugly crying on there. Anyhow, we're going to go off topic. Anyway, so I'm Saira. I am a child and youth worker and registered social worker. Like both of you, I wear many hats. I am a mom, a wife, a sister, a daughter, dedicated aunt. I love all my titles. And then in my work life, I'm a student affairs coordinator and contract lecturer. So I do teach in child and youth care programs. And I have my own private practice as a registered social worker called Lotus Counseling and Supervision Reimagined. So
I would love to see your calendar. I know how many colors are on it.
We have a family calendar, and then I have my work calendar, and then I have like my work personal calendar, and then I have all my kids' extracurriculars, and then we have events. Yeah, it's
This is you should get a call back to our last episode.
Where
we talked about burnout and balancing.
Well, we don't know if you're burned out. Maybe she's really organized.
I think even if you're really organized, I feel like everyone gets hit with burnout.
You know what? I really enjoy my showers alone. Because typically I get supervised by my 3-year-old, or he's turning 3 tomorrow, but like he'll just be in there saying, "Mama car, Mama wash hair now, Mama this, Mama that," and I'm like, okay, like sometimes like you can exit. Like, how about you go find Daddy? And like
no, they'll never. Why do that?
But and also like I find solace in just like taking 5 minutes to just like read a book or just be outside. I know.
Was that a jab?
No, but like that's my vibe. That's my vibe. No, that's what. Ashley, stop it.
We're trying to get Ashley to read, like physically read. Yeah. She listens to audiobooks, but like physically read.
Anyway,
I'm trying to get her to read Dear Divya. I mean, come on. No, I'm just joking. Anyways, but 5 minutes, because as a mom of 3, it's busy.
Yep.
It's busy, and then you have like my mom and my brother and my parent, like my in-laws, and like life is just busy. Like I'm the event coordinator, I'm the chef, I'm the doctor, the nurse, the social worker, and yes, my partner does take on, like we do share like our parental roles, but you still
I think
have all of
naturally as a
those.
mom,
Yeah.
it's just like a thing. Like it doesn't matter. It's
There's something
unavoidable.
special about moms that there's just like as much as good of like a dad someone could be, there's just something about your mom that's just always gonna hit a little different.
It's
Or you just
funny.
kind of
You
need
need
your
to stop
mom.
doing that to us. The kids need to stop. You're right. You enjoy it. I know you.
I
enjoy
love being a mom.
But
Like,
it naturally, like, it's like bittersweet, but it does get tiring. I'm not,
No,
you
for
have
sure.
3, so.
For sure. And like that's where he comes in, and I
Mhm, for
communicate when I'm exhausted or when I'm feeling like, okay, you need to take over right now. Like I just can't. I need my space. And like we're so good at doing that with each other. And like he'll tell me like, okay, like you need to take over, or I just need to step away for right now. And like, but that's also like years of us like working on our relationship and
It's true,
working
yeah,
on
it takes a long time.
getting to that point of being able to like communicate our needs. And like, when there's busy times at work, or when there's not so busy times at work, or, when you need that time, okay, like you need to be the default parent right now because it's like enrollment and my life is crazy. So yeah, but,
Okay, so as per usual, we're gonna start with our wellness check before we dive into topics. So we're gonna start with our guest, Saira. How are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10?
I feel like I'm like a 7 right now. I'm a bit on like an adrenaline rush because my son's turning 3 tomorrow.
That's very
So
exciting.
it's like bittersweet. But like I'm just so excited because I love birthdays, and so I go like really big with birthday parties. So I planned his birthday tomorrow, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, and so we're doing like a pumpkin Halloween theme. That's what we always do.
Oh.
Oh, Ross. And so yeah, and that's tomorrow. So I'm like a 7.5. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You'll be on 10 tomorrow.
I'm
Save
also
the
like-
energy.
I feel
Yeah.
like you're gonna have to be on
Yeah.
10 tomorrow anyway for like a child's birthday.
Bro.
Yeah.
Just like we're gonna have to kick it up
We're gonna
anyway.
be hosting.
Yeah.
We like, oh my god, okay, everyone, time for this activity. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But I feel like it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Nice. Ashley, how are you feeling?
I am feeling like a little like nauseous today and like tired. So I'm feeling like a 6, and I know we have to like go look for outfits after this for this shoot I'm doing on the weekend. So I don't know how that's gonna go.
Well, we're gonna work our way
I'm
up to like at
thinking
least an
it's-
8.
Yeah, I'm
We're
thinking
try
it's
to
gonna
work
be
our
like
way
that
up.
White Chicks scene. You know the movie White Chicks.
Yeah.
You know the scene where they're like
Which one? I haven't seen that in a very long time.
Which one? Which scene?
the scene where they're trying on the outfits.
Oh, yes.
And nothing fits.
Yes.
And nothing is working.
I don't need to relate that to a movie. That's my life.
I know, literally. Earlier today.
It's literally my life.
So, I don't know. You're going to have to be my crutch to that. We'll figure it out. But
Yeah,
otherwise,
we will.
like, I always feel good. I'm happy to be here. And, like, I always feel like we're productive when we're here. And we're having great conversation. So, like, that's probably why I'm at a 6. But otherwise, I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty tired.
Okay.
What about
Well,
you?
yeah, we're gonna work on that. Maybe like a 7, and I'm gonna work my way up to like at least like an 8.5. You know.
We're all pretty low.
No, I mean
We're
it's
like-
above average.
yeah,
I
it's
think
like
it's pretty
above.
good.
Okay, it's like
Yeah.
a C to a B.
Like
No,
a
a 7 is
B.
like a B.
Yeah, a B. We're
Please,
like a B.
7.5
grades are
is definitely-
triggering. Like, please.
That's how I
No, it's
equate
just
everything.
it's just generally
Like, I'm
good.
a C.
Well, also
Don't
the
do that.
weather. The weather's a bit gloomy.
Yeah, the
today.
weather was a bit
it is.
gloomy,
Yeah.
and I think today, because of the gloom, I was kind of like, oh man, I gotta actually get up, I gotta do makeup, put clothes on and stuff, and then had a clothing crisis, so that kind of knocked me down a little
I
bit.
just think it's so funny sometimes. I'm just like, oh my god, I gotta get up. I gotta move. The couch
Yeah.
is feeling so nice today.
I was very into my book, and that's why, and then I was like, okay, shoot, time to get up.
I've been a Netflix fiend recently. Love is
I need
Blind, Dubai,
Okay, I'm not
or
watching that.
Habibi. Are you watching that?
Never
Oh my
mind.
God.
I was gonna say I needed recommendations,
No.
but I'm not
You guys
watching
gotta
that.
watch it. After that, I'm watching Sweet Bobby. Like, I just can't get off. I usually am not into Netflix like this.
Yeah.
I cannot get off. First of all, it was Love is Blind, the other one. Tyler and Ashley, if you know, you know. You guys don't know, do you? Oh my god.
I refuse to watch that.
It's so good.
I'm
It's
not
so
watching
good.
that.
Oh my god, Love is Blind Habibi is the best.
Jesus Christ, I'm not watching that.
It's so good. Like, it's really, really, really good. It's so weird to see the difference in, like, men and all these different dynamics compared to the American one, but
I like a good plot. I like a
No,
story that I can
Sweet
get
Bobby.
involved in.
No, guy, I can't watch that. What happened to the Guyanese lady?
What is that?
Sweet
Is that
Bobby.
a romance?
It's about yeah, she is Indo-Caribbean.
Yeah, they're Indo-Caribbean.
No, they're Indian.
No, wait. Okay, so
You're thinking about the worst ex.
Yes, the worst ex.
The worst
Okay,
ex.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, I'm sick. How do I know this? I'm sick. But yeah,
Is this a reality show or a show
it's
with a story?
documentary about this girl.
Okay, fair.
Sorry guys, this is like I have to tell them now because if you watched it, then I didn't watch it yet, but I've heard great things. No, it's about this girl, and she was dating somebody for 9 years, and she was like not catfished. They never spoke. They only spoke on they spoke on Skype, but the person never spoke. I don't know all the details, but this is I know it's crazy.
It's not crazy.
As a spoiler, okay?
This sounds
You want to give me the
insane.
spoiler? You're never gonna watch it.
Yeah, I probably won't.
It was her cousin. It was her cousin lying to her for 9 years.
Damn.
I know, but anyway, let's not get too much into Netflix.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
Yeah, I'm not even. But you know what? These people like exist because when my dad passed away, like my mom became single on Facebook, and then you just had all these pariahs and like fake accounts like messaging her, and I wasn't monitoring her accounts. And then I look at her phone one day, and something is saying, "Oh, I love you, Zai." I was like, "Who is telling they love you?" And she's just like, "Oh, it's my friend." I was like, "What friend you get?" And she's like, "Yeah." And
so
she was
innocent.
like, and she's like, "Oh, it's this guy. He's a pilot in another country." I was like, "Oh, so like," so I didn't react. So I was like, "So when you go on video call, is the screen black? Is he telling you that his phone doesn't work?" And she's like, "Yeah, how do you know?" And I was like, "Yeah, so like, does he, like, is he messaging you this, and this?" And she's like, "Yeah, how do you know?" And I was like, "Mom, there are like people out there that prey on single women, and you are being preyed upon right now." And I made up some story about my friend's mom who like went to like Hungary to meet a guy and like transferred him like money, and I lied. I made up a story. Oh gosh, I hope she doesn't watch this. So
At this point, you clearly saved her.
She and then I was like, "Do I have your permission to like to block and delete this man?" She said, but before I block and I caused him so stink. I'm pretty sure he would like he never reached out back to my mom because
It's
like
crazy
lost
good. And
it.
you really don't know.
And I don't know.
This is
I'm
a
like,
true story. The one. Oh, that one's a true story.
Yeah.
Also,
Oh, that's also a
the
true
one
story.
on Netflix. The one on Netflix was a true story. So it's crazy. You got to be safe out there. And I think, well, with that being said,
About being safe out there.
Yeah.
I really want to. Well, I do want to like kind of set the vibe. I know we're going to be talking about a lot of serious things today, and I don't want to say excited, but I am excited in a way where we're finally going to be like talking about these things publicly to people and really having these types of conversations. I know we've been trying to like have these conversations for a long time, find the right way, find the right space, like have the right community. Like putting something in a blog is so major, but also being able to like jump into conversation and expand on it is super, super critical. And I know you were so willing to come today to like open up about your story of like what you've experienced through being a mental health professional, but also things that you've experienced in your own personal life. So I really want to give you the space to really just open up and start that conversation because it really is about your story today. So I want to just jump right into it, and then like obviously let's get into it.
Amazing. Thank you. So again, like thank you, Ash. And I think like I know what I'm going to be discussing is kind of touchy and controversial, and like people may support me and may not support me, and that's okay. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone has their own ways of how they would have handled the situation. But for me, like I was witnessing abuse being done to a child that was really close to me by a family member that was close to me. And as a mental health professional, as anyone, you have the duty to report. You have the duty to report abuse. And if you don't, you can be fined. Because say that young person now is killed or commits suicide or something severe happens to them and you knew about it, you could be fined. So in my mind, I And what duty to report means is like you are calling the children's aid services. And that's what I did. I did try to communicate with the family members about, like maybe don't give your child so much licks, or how about you try this method instead? Because again, like I'm a child and youth worker. I was working with children every day. I'm getting disclosures all the time at work when I worked for the school board. And now I'm seeing it happen to someone I love and I care about. And so obviously I wanted to try and support before it got to that point of like, okay, like I can't support anymore. I can't be the person to intervene anymore because it's not working. And so I spent a long time on the phone with CAS. I think I spent about like 3 hours talking to them about what was going on, the history, the trauma, and they did intervene. They got involved. But then that put my relationship with that family member, even though I wanted to be kept anonymous, they broke my anonymity.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
What happens when they do that?
Well, they did it, and that severed my relationship with that family member, and I lost all contact with that young person. And so that happened.
That's major. I want to come back to that for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they broke my anonymity because I don't know what the worker was doing. I'm in the field, so I told the worker, you're free to call me. I know you may not get permission from them to share what's going on, but you can always touch base with me, no problem. And I want you all to understand that once it came out that I was the person that did that phone call, I was family members were like, oh, like I'm gonna fight you, like I'm gonna beat you up, like how could you do this?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
To this day, like that's still like a thing where I have cousins that want to cut, like we're big women and you're saying those threats about your cousin. Anyhow, so that happened, and that took a toll on me because
any natural human, I think that's fair.
It took a toll on me because it's like the love that you have for children. And I love children. Like I love being a mom, as I mentioned. Like it's one of my favorite jobs, and I also love being an aunt. And so I take that job just as serious. And so when this was going on, I had to try and separate myself from what was going on because I had no contact with that young person anymore. Only through family members would like randomly send me a message or send me a picture of this young person and like give me an update on how they're doing. And I would hear positive things and then I would hear negative things. And I would just pray. I would pray. I gave that young person all the tools that they needed to survive in that situation that they were in. And I prayed. And I want to bring it back to like being Caribbean because I was always told like, this is how we are. We're Caribbean. We're not white people, Saira. And it's like, no.
And it's almost like a betrayal.
Yeah.
That's what it
you're not
feels,
supposed to meddle
right?
with
versus
other
like the betrayal on the family versus the betrayal. Like, how much are we betraying this child by just sweeping everything under the rug, right?
Yeah.
It's really what it is, the reality, but...
And for me, it's like, white people too have stuff going on. This is not a white people issue. This is a systemic, this is a cultural issue that we need to address. And so, for me, it was more of, I became a parent. And I would have people in my life that would say to me, like, look at me, people who don't have children, people who have children, oh, if that was my child, I would be giving him licks right now. Or
I hate that comment. I hate that.
So yeah, and I was a young mom. I had Nakai very young or young-ish because I would go to mommy groups and I was the youngest there. But like in general, like my husband and I, we chose not to like beat our children. Like we said we're not going to inflict that trauma onto our child, because we saw what it did to family members. We saw what it did to like someone we love and care about very much, and it really irked me, because then I'm like, am I supposed to be beating my child? Like, am I supposed to be like doing this? Like, is this the way that we're supposed to be raising our children? Like, with licks?
And I think, like, as a mother, you also, when you have your own children, you realize, like, that's when you really realize how different each child's needs are. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, licks should never be like, oh, well, this one needs it. But, like, but you know what I mean, right? Like, you really realize how different their needs are. And especially, like, I know, obviously, you work in the mental health space and you've been around it a lot. Like, I think that you are probably able to see it from a different perspective as well, from, like, you know, like, even for myself, like, being around a lot of mental health professionals now, I can see my perspective is a lot different from a lot of people. And I'm sure, like, you've had to kind of put up not a wall, but, like, almost like a protection for yourself, because you know, like, what perspectives can come. And, like,
I'm gonna come back to the licks comment, but I want to go back to the children's aid, like getting connecting with children's aid, connecting with CAS. And so there's a huge stigma around children's aid, and I know especially when it comes to, like, Black and brown bodies, from back in the day, CAS, like, they were apprehending like no tomorrow, like. And so when I think about the decision that I made to call CAS, it was a very difficult one, because I know when I'm working with my Caribbean families in the school, and, like, one of my students would be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get so much licks today, and I was like, hold on, what, like, tell me more about that comment. And he's just like, nah, miss, you know I'm joking, like, my mom doesn't beat me. I was like, yes, but if you said that to a teacher outside, that's a call to CAS. And then you're getting people to come and intervene on your hardworking mother, where you just made a comment that could have been blown out of proportion if it wasn't me.
Yeah, because somebody of a different culture might hear
may
that
not understand,
and
blow it up,
and
that was
context.
happening, and that was happening before. And at the point in time when I called, CAS was going towards a model of, like, keeping kids in the home, working with the family, getting family to go to parenting classes. But I feel like there wasn't a level of accountability and checking in and really, like, giving kids the space to really be able to tell the truth. Because a lot of the time, sometimes parents would be like, you need to lie to your worker, or don't tell them what's really going on. And I've worked with, like, those kids who, like, that's happened. Because they don't want to get their parents in trouble, or they don't want to be taken away. And that's what parents think, but that's not always going to happen. And then you have situations where kids need to be taken away and they're not doing anything. They're not apprehending, they're not intervening in the appropriate ways. So now CAS is more of a in-home intervention. They're not going to apprehend unless, like, the child is, like, severely being neglected or abused. They really try and work with the family to support the family and give them strategies and support that young person. That's my experience more recently versus before.
So when we think about, like, CAS and the Caribbean experience with CAS, what would you say are some of, like, well, you said, like, the biggest misconceptions is just, like, lie and this and that. Like, what are some of the ways that you have kind of seen these things happen in Caribbean families, and, like, how it's been, like, negatively impacting? Because I think one of the biggest stigmas, like we said, like, one of the biggest things I think we always say is, like, sweep it under the rug. Or when is something serious enough to get to that space? Or, like, how, I mean, closer to the end of the podcast, I want to get into, like, some of the resources and actually, like, how to take action in healthy ways. But, like, when we think about what is that experience like for Caribbean people right now, and, like, what are the negative misconceptions, and what have you seen? Like, what does that look like?
I feel like before, when I was more frontline, and, like, even before I was frontline, when I was in school, a lot of young people were getting apprehended, especially, like, Black Caribbean, because they didn't have workers with the lens of being a Caribbean person.
Yeah.
So you had
Major.
these workers that were going in, and parents were brought up with licks, and so that's all they know, that's all they know on how to parent. So you have newcomers from the Caribbean here that are parenting in a Canadian society where you can't bust your child's ass to like a severe degree, or lock them out of the house in the cold, or any of that stuff. So that was happening a lot. Like, kids were getting apprehended from their families. But what CAS saw was that at age 16, kids were going back home. So they would be in foster care or kinship care for like 5 years. And then as soon as they were able to be like, go home, they went home at age 16. Now, more often, CAS is intentional with sending like a person of color to a Caribbean home.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
And
I mean, obviously, we think it's a big thing. It's like
they're being more intentional with like sending someone to work with the family versus working against the family.
Yeah, and I can think like naturally people would feel that because like just like what you said, like just having that cultural understanding is so major. Like I think a lot of it is like, even when you think about Caribbean families, right? And you do something like that, it truly is all that we know. Like it really is all that we know. So all that we can really do is be like, okay, I'm doing this because I love you. But like you don't see it in like a lot of times something happens. Like almost everybody I know I got licks like once. I know, I was one of those kids. I only got licks like once, right? And I think like
I did not.
Yeah, like,
I got
my parents didn't, right? Like my parents got a lot of licks, right? Like everything was licks, but they also like grew up in a home with a lot of love. Right? So now you're like, as Caribbean people, we're like they are like in these spaces where they're getting so much licks, but they're also getting so much love. Where it just becomes that like norm of like a way of life. And really what the gap is because I think like, I mean, there is a lot of like, I'm sure there is a lot of dysfunction within Caribbean families for sure. But there is also like the real issue is the lack of understanding, the lack of tools, the lack of like, cultural differences when you come somewhere like here, right? And like what does that look like for people?
And I think like parenting in general is hard. It's so hard to parenting in this day and age, and like the way they parented us back in the day is very different to how we are parenting now. So I'll give you an example of me unlearning something from my childhood that my mom and dad used to do to me. So, and I saw it with my son. So when my eldest was younger, he was very clumsy. He used to spill things. And I would get frustrated. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, Nakai, like again, like,
yeah,
why? And so then I'd have to clean it up, and he'd be there and he'd be like, I'm sorry, mommy. And then it just clicked to me one day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm making him, like, I'm doing that to him. And he's 3, he's 4. And I remember in the pandemic, he like spilled his chocolate milk all over the table and on his breakfast. And we just made pancakes. And like, I remember he looked at me and he like expected me to like lose it. And I was like, Nakai, are you okay? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let's clean it up together. And he was like, wait, what is happening right now? And I cannot explain to you the feeling I had inside of me. It was like, it was so uncomfortable. Because I'm just so used to like, still to this day, when my mom comes to my house, I'm terrified of spilling something because the lady can give me licks. Because that's how, I remember spilling a bowl of spaghetti when I was a young age, and she like lost her mind on me. And I don't want to make my children feel like that when they are, a big 30-year-old person that they're scared to spill something. Mind you, like my mom grew up with 8 siblings. Like that's all she knew how to do. So I'm not like, Mom, if you watch this, I love you, okay? I promise I'm not trying to back talk you or anything. I recognize that you did the best that you could with the tools that you had. So I'm just choosing to change it. I'm choosing to be different. And you can still be Caribbean and add that Caribbeanness to you, but you can parent in a healthy way.
I feel like there's almost a notion that, like, if you step away from some of these things that have been, like, a traditional Caribbean parenting method, whether it's literally, like, yelling your kids, licks, whatever, that it's like, oh, well, you're going soft. You're raising your kids white. Your kids are not going to be raised proper and, like, respectful. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certain things that we also tend to pride ourselves on as, like, Caribbean people is, like, you know, I don't know, like, Caribbean parents, grandparents, they always very, very much pride themselves on, like, our children, grandchildren are, you know, we're clean, respectful, this, that, whatever. Like, we're proper. We're brought up to be very proper. But it's like when you step away from those things, I find that sometimes that notion is behind it is like, well, now your kids are gonna be, you know what I mean? Like, they're gonna run wild and they're not gonna have manners and this, that, because you're not enforcing.
But there's a way to be firm and be, like, kindly firm and have those discussions with your children. I think the one thing that I missed out on with my parents was we didn't talk. There was no discussions about, like, why. They just said it and you did it. There was no question to, like, why am I doing it? Or there's no challenging. You weren't allowed to challenge. And so in my house, you know, there's questions. You're allowed to question why I'm asking you to do something. I don't get upset with you when you spill something on the ground. And I think that's the major difference between, like, Nakai and Nilin is, like, Nilin's being raised in, like, me unlearning all my stuff and all my trauma, and poor Nakai got a little bit of it, and we're, like, working through that. And, like, I think
it's just when you're firstborn, it's always gonna, like, they always say the firstborn kind of goes through that with you, because I think one of the quotes that I had read one time is also like as parents, you have to remember, like, you're a human too, you know, like, even with me and my dad, I have to, like, I'm still working on it, but I had to tell myself that too, like, I am, like, he's just a human, you know, and you can see, like, naturally as humans, you go through different things, like, you go through depression, you go through this, you go through that, and, like, thankfully, we always say this, like, our generation is really getting to, like, understand what those tools are. But those tools were not a norm. So for us, like, you probably, like, that chocolate milk thing probably, like, ate you alive all day. You're like, oh my God. Like, I can think of some mornings where I'm just like, Zane's gonna hate me forever. He hates me. He hates me. He hates me today.
Oh my God.
He's gonna have a bad day at school. And then he comes home and he has a fine day. But at the same time, you're kind of like you're one, we have to be kind to ourselves, but we are doing so much, like, unlearning of what we saw that you don't even notice it until sometimes after. Like, even things you're saying right now, I'm thinking of myself as a parent, where it's just like, it's a major reflection of, like, what do I do? How do we do it? And just, like, I'm sure even for you, like, you working in the mental health space, you see it from a different perspective, working with youth, working with family, like, dealing with the things that you dealt with your family versus, like, what experience your partner brings, and now having to, like, you're being up here with the understanding piece and having to bring somebody up here, and now it's like, oh, well, how do we, like, balance? Like, you know, it's hard. It's a lot of things, right?
No, for sure. And, like, Neil's not in the mental health space. He's, like, in the business world. So I'm like, I remember I came home one time off topic, and, like, I was pregnant with Nakai, and a little boy, like, punched me in my stomach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, like, he was like, what? Like, what? Like, and we struggled with infertility. And so, like, getting pregnant was a journey in itself. And I started bleeding, and he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I'm going to go to that school, talk to that child's parent. I'm like, you're not going to do nothing. Like, I filled out an incident report. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. I'm just going to rest, go to the doctor, and it'll be okay. That little boy has also witnessed severe trauma in his life. So getting pregnant was a trigger for him. Like, seeing my belly was a trigger for him. And so that's what happened. Okay. Yes, and I think that for me, it's about, like, me as a person, like, I want to break the cycle. I want to break the cycle of that trauma and of, like, being the trauma of Caribbean parenting. Because I do feel like we can be a bit harsh on our children. And And we have these like super, because we come from that. But we can also change that. We have a choice to make. We have a choice to make that we can be kind and caring and supportive and firm parents, or we can just continue the cycle that we were raised in, and then our children can feel the way we felt or the way our parents felt. And like, I feel like that experience of going through witnessing abuse to someone that I care and love really taught me that I don't want to do this. My upbringing, I said, I don't want to beat my children. I don't want to cuss up my children. I don't want to make them feel bad about themselves. I just want to love them. I want to surround them with love and care and support so they can thrive in this environment. Again, our society today is a lot different than what we mentioned before, 10 years ago. When I got married in 2014, there's no TikTok, there's no Shein, there's no Temu. there was Instagram. Instagram had now come out.
Yeah, it was in its early. Yeah, it was like early.
You could post one photo. There's no videos. You could post one photo, and then there was hashtags, but the hashtags didn't really mean anything.
It's true, yeah.
And then you had like your 7 very bad filters to pick from.
Yes, the filters. Yeah. Oh my God. If you scroll to my bottom of my Instagram from like 2013, 2012, they're all filtered. They're all filtered photos. But
you still have like you still kept all of them?
Yeah, I still kept it. You can go Mako. It's okay.
I know. I don't have any of those anymore.
Yes. I remember there's a picture of me. Neil and I went to see the CN Tower, and there's like a really bad filter. And I also had the iPhone 4. So the camera quality was like terrible. I had the iPhone 4S for like a long time. And then I had the 6S forever. I went from the 6S to like the 12. Like that was the jump that I made.
Okay. Yeah, you were dedicated to that.
So you got a new phone 2 years ago. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, back to topic. That's so funny. That's funny. But so you were saying you don't want to raise your kids like that. There wasn't a lot of stuff. There wasn't a lot of TikTok, wasn't a lot of Instagram, and yeah, carry on.
No, and I think that we have a choice. Ultimately, we have a choice. We have a choice to be different. We have a choice to change the future, and we have a choice to unlearn what's been done to us. And so I made that choice. I made that choice that I struggled with the voices from other people of like, oh, your son's too wild. They would say those things. Oh, he's too hyper. You need to get him checked for ADHD. And even if he does have an ADHD, I that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But or like, oh, if that was my child, he would get licks left, right, and center. And I was like, my response was like, great, like he's not yours, but thanks for your comment.
Yeah, like thanks for adding that.
But yeah, and I think that you're always gonna get comments from people. And it's how you choose. It's a hard thing too.
And it's a hard thing, especially in Caribbean families.
Yes.
Getting those comments is the hardest thing. And like challenging those perspectives, or like we've talked about the ADHD thing a lot, right? And
I remember my thought.
Okay.
I remember my thought. So you had commented about parenting earlier. You were talking about parenting and, we're human.
Yes.
And you were speaking about your father and how, like going through the motions of like what, like your upbringing. Mm-hmm. And we're human. We lose it sometimes, right? We lose our cool. Yeah, definitely. We yell. We can't control that. We're human. But it's what you do after.
Yeah.
It's what you do after. How do you repair that yelling?
True.
And I will tell you, I apologize to my children. I will go and I will say, like, after an hour or after I showered and we've had time to just process what happened, I will go to them and say, you know what? I am really sorry. I'm really sorry that I snapped earlier in the kitchen. It wasn't okay. I'm under a lot of stress at work, and I'm sorry. Like, I should not have done that. This is how I could have approached that situation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is a big thing, right? It's a big part of parenting. Like, I'm sitting here, like, sometimes I feel like I don't know what to say because, like, it's literally life. Like, this is literally, like, you have your three, so you kind of been through that situation. I know sometimes I come to you for those things, like, just to get some perspective, but, like, it is a super hard thing.
It's
like,
very
and you,
hard.
as a mother, as a parent, like, you walk, no matter what you do, like, I feel like in a lot of situations, you walk with so much guilt. Even as, like, a good parent, I consider, like, I think I, like, like, you do as much as you can to be a good parent, but no matter what, as soon as you make a major or minor, like a minor slip, you walk with that guilt all day. Like, if me and my son have a bad morning, I sit in that all day. Like, I sit in it all day, and I'm just like, like, you're just like, what could I have done? Like, how am I going to fix this? Like, what am I going to, should I just go pick him up early? Like, should I just pick him up early today?
Go to McDonald's.
Yeah, like, what should we do? You know what I mean? And then, like, they are like, yeah, like, it was fine. Like, like, but you're right. It's like, how do you respond after? And, like, how do you take care of that? And how do you take care of those feelings? But I do want to, we did bring up the CAS a bit. And I think you brought up some really, really important topics around, like, that experience of people, like, reaching out to CAS, but also, like, reaching out for just supports in general. And I bring that up because, again, like, just diving a little bit deeper into your experience, because you said you brought up major things, like CAS had, like, things that I find people may hear and be like, well, that's exactly why I don't call. Right?
So with CAS, in terms of, like, my experience, so I've had experience professionally, and then I've had experience personally.
Right.
So professionally, I've typically called because of a disclosure that came to me by, like, a child. I've had children disclose sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, neglect. We had a child that would come to school in the same clothes every day, that would smell like urine. We had a child that just didn't have lunch every day. There was a child... I'm not going to share all the stories, and CAS would intervene. They wouldn't apprehend, but they would intervene, and we don't get updates on what's going on unless the family gives consent. So some families were like, yeah, you can talk to the youth worker at the school so that we can, like, fully wrap around to work to support the family and the child. And then some families were, like, very, like, I don't want the school to know what's going on. In cases like the one that I was in, so obviously there was no consent given, but the worker that was there knew that I was a child and youth worker, so they would just broadly speak to me about the situation, but not give too many details. And then we lost contact because the people, like, the family members moved. And so that was my experience with CS. And then they gave up my anonymity because I asked to remain, I don't know how to say that word, I'm so sorry. I asked to remain anonymous, and they gave it up, and that created more issues.
How did they, when you say they gave it up, so you called, you made this, let's call it a
accusation
or whatever. Yeah. You made a call and you brought this case now started. And then they went to
the person and was like, so and so called me, and they're hearing from other people that this is happening, so you either tell the truth or retake.
And they went to the house.
They went to the house and they went to the person. And they said directly, so-and-so called.
This person called.
Yeah, the worker, CAS worker, gave up my
But are there situations where they sort of have to assess and be like, we have to
no, like, if you ask to remain anonymous, you remain anonymous.
I've never heard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been in this. I've never really, like, had to go through the CAS system, so I don't know what's a normal, what's not, but that seems pretty serious.
Yeah, and so I think, and, like, anyone can call CAS. If you suspect abuse by, like, of children of any type, you can just call and ask. You could say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm seeing. Like, is this grounds for, like, a call or a report? Like, would you investigate this? And they could do a wellness check. Like, they could go out to the home just to see everything's okay. But that could either make the situation worse or make it better. It just...
So with CAS though, right? So let's say, we'll just use your situation, right? So you make this call and then they just decide to go. Like, was it because you were a CAS worker, or if you were an average person making a call, right?
So what was going on in that child's life was grounds for an investigation.
But so because I'm thinking, like, when you think of like if you went to the police with like a sexual assault claim, they're like, well, you need to like come with X amount of evidence to like for us to actually investigate. Right. So that's what I'm wondering, like, because I'm sure in a lot of cases there are people that are going to listen to this podcast and it might set off a light for them. Like, shoot, I do know A, B, and C is going on, but I can't prove it. I'm just going to say it.
No, well, that's why it's like CAS has to do an investigation. And they have like, it's either like, I think they wait a week to investigate, or it's like an immediate investigation, or it's like they have different timelines on like to assess, like that intake worker on the phone will assess and say, okay, I'm going to get a worker to go out tomorrow. If it's like very, very severe. So I'll give you an example. I'll share my experience with CAS.
Yeah.
So CAS was called on my family when I was 11 because my dad pushed me down the stairs. And then I went back to school. So I went back to school with bruises on my arm and my face. And I was 11. And my teachers were like, what's going on? And they sent me down to like the guidance counselor. Because back in the day, middle schools had guidance counselors. Yeah. And my case was deemed as like, you keep her at the school. She's in harm's way. Do not send her home.
Oh my gosh.
So I was 11. I had no idea what was happening. And like my teachers were asking me questions. And I was like sharing with them, like, because you never talk about what's going on at home. And I remember I had a friend there that knew what like my home life was like. And she was like, you can share. It's okay. Like, I'm here. Like, you got this. And then I shared with my teacher, and then they had a duty to report. They saw bruises. They saw like this was physical harm. And my experience with a CAS worker, so I had CS in my life from a very young age. And they wanted to apprehend me. They were looking into kinship care and then my mom fought.
Kinship is like when somebody
yes
takes you.
Yes.
Okay.
So like say we're sisters, they would call you to see if you would want to take my child while they're doing the investigation and while like I'm in parenting classes or whatever.
I think that is very important to note though, for
yes.
people that like may want to reach out or whatever.
But
yeah.
The parent has to consent. Yes.
What?
So, but like
that's kind of like contradicting a little bit.
I know, like it's very like there's so much red tape and it's very frustrating. But when children get to a certain age, they can refuse to go to a group home. They can choose where they want to stay. They can a police person officer cannot just say, I'm ripping you and taking you to a group home. And if they do, like say that a police officer shows up, that young person can continue to AWOL and like just leave and go back to where they feel comfortable and safe.
So, okay, so back to your story. So now you have CAS in your life.
So now I had CAS in my life at a young age. My mom pleaded and begged to for them not to take me away. And I don't know, they kept me in the home. And I was the one that like my mom, I would tell them like whenever we experienced it, because abuse just doesn't go away. Like domestic violence just doesn't go away. And it continued in the home despite CAS being in the home. My mom and dad, like they were both like, you're not telling the worker this. You're not going to share what's happening in this house. And so for me, it was more, I used my worker more to like have the conversations that I wasn't having with my mom. So to like talk about like period health, to talk about like boys and like sexual health, all of that. So, and they closed my case when I was starting high school. So when I was 14, so they were in my life 11, 12, 13. So like about 3 or 4 years. And I had like 3 different white workers that didn't understand Caribbean culture.
That was one of the biggest things for me. Like in high school, all throughout high school, I was with the social workers, I was with the child and youth workers. Like I spoke to every single one of them as they switched in and out. And I could when I went to start seeing a psychiatrist, I was like, the person was white. I'm like, I can't do this. I couldn't, I physically couldn't do it because it makes such a big, significant difference in understanding. And as we dive deeper into this conversation, my thought is knowing your mom, right? And thinking about obviously, she was younger. They were obviously going through things, your father was around at that time. And it's just such a different experience where your mom now is at that time was probably what even is this? What do you mean you're taking her? I can imagine your mom being
I'm pretty sure I watched my mom cry that day. And I was I never...
Because but my thought is I mean, not that, I'm sure there were, you getting pushed downstairs, those things are, obviously not okay,
She wasn't there. That's the thing. And she's typically my advocate, and I'm typically her advocate.
Yeah.
So she wasn't there when all of this happened. And... a lot of transitions were going on.
But she just had no tools. You're thrown into this. CAS shows up. It's so intimidating, right? But it's case by case, too, right?
For sure.
There are cases where they really do need to intervene, and it's so major. And I don't want to put it out there CAS is this terrible thing. A lot of kids need it. A lot of our Black and brown children need it. So when I think about what I know about you and your family and those things, I'm just thinking your mom, she probably just didn't have those tools, because look how hard we have to search for those tools as people in the community. You know what I mean?
And my mom is a true survivor of abuse. Yes, she's my ride or die. And I look at her and I look at her life and what I know about abuse and why literally I entered this field, because I wanted to be that representation for young people. Because I never had that representation. I wish I had a Caribbean worker. Oh my gosh, that would have made my life so much easier.
It does make a big
so
difference.
much easier. If I had a brown Trinidadian or Guyanese worker that would just be okay, uncle, come on. Like my dad was,
and it makes them feel more comfortable, and that's what it is. There's not a lot of reform in the system, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of reform. It's just it's just discipline kind of thing, your parents are now these immigrants, but you're right, it's coming up a lot more around being able to have those supports, just people like you that are stepping into the field,
Yeah, and I still experience it today, being in post-secondary, I'll have students that come up to me oh my gosh, I've never seen a Caribbean at the front of the room teaching me. Wow. Or I've never experienced a brown teacher. This is so cool. And a lot of us, we don't exist in spaces of power and spaces that we think that we can't be in, because that's just not for us, or we were told to just go to school, get a job, and just work. But there's more. We exist in these spaces, and our young people should know about that. But that's a whole other conversation that I'm not gonna open up now. Oh my god, we could do. Yeah, I would love to do another one, and then we could talk about me taking students to Guyana and that experience, and how that really opened up their eyes to Guyana and that country. And but anyhow. Yeah, and so with my that journey of mine, it really triggered the reason why I advocated for that young person that was a family member, because I know growing up in domestic violence, the impacts that it has on a person, and growing up with abuse, the impacts that it has on a person. And I would hate to see that in happen to someone that I love and care about. And so really and truly, that was why I made the call. A lot of people weren't happy with me, but I made the call, and the case, I believe, was closed after 2 years, and then that was it. That was it, and I had no contact, and I can tell you now that young person is back in my life, and we do communicate, but there's still that history of trauma, that time period that I wasn't in their life. Yeah. That really impacted them. And so Now that I'm back, it's about like learning how to one, like redevelop our relationship, and also like supporting them in accessing the resources that they need to get so that they don't repeat the cycle as a young person who's experienced abuse.
Yeah, I always say it's never too late. It's actually tattooed on me.
I love that. Where is that?
It's right over there. Oh, it's my first tattoo. Yeah, it's never too late.
nice.
And it actually came from a mental health experience of my own.
Wow.
Like with my own parent. That's why I actually have it. I always forget this was my first tat, but yeah, that's actually why I have it. Because I always say like it truly is never too late in a sense that like it's like when it comes to mental health, as long as you're still alive, like there still is a capability for like space to heal. But you know, like one thing quickly before we jump to our resources, because I do think this is so important, especially in Caribbean families, around like what like perspective on like just like how you said, I know you brought it up 2 times actually, around like a lot of people weren't happy with me, and I feel like probably a lot of you decision making actually had nothing to do with like should I call or not. You probably knew that answer already, right? Your biggest thing was probably like, what is everybody gonna say? Like, am I gonna lose this relationship with this person, this person, this person? And I think in Caribbean families that's a big part. You don't lose those. You always stay close to your family, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, no matter how they treat you. It's not a norm to go out of that, and like now you're disrespecting the whole family. So what was that feeling like for you? Because I just think a lot of people, that may be their barrier to like saving somebody that they love.
You know, for me, those people in my mind, if you're going to normalize abuse, then we probably shouldn't be friends. Like if you're going to normalize, because again, like I had family members normalizing abuse to this young person, saying, oh, it's normal for moms to beat their children. It's normal for moms to cuss up and swear at their children. And no, it's not normal to do that. You do not verbally abuse people. You do not physically abuse people. That is not okay. We do not do that. That is not okay. And I think I was okay with letting go of those people. Should they come and try and fight me? Okay, like, I'll just call the popo on you. I don't care. But for me, my intention was really about caring and supporting and just making sure that young person knew their options and knew, because that's what CS is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Give them a card, tell them about their options, tell them about their voice. And I just hoped and prayed that they did that. And they did do their job in that sense, because I'm now reconnected with that young person. And I did not care about the relationships that I lost. It is what it is. Like I had family in Guyana.
I think it's a major part of breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
I think it's more important to keep someone alive than to keep unnecessary relationships alive.
I would have hated to attend a funeral of that young person. And what if I was silent? What if I never said anything? And I had family in Guyana that weren't happy with me. And I was like, you know, in my heart, I know I did the best thing that I could have. And I know that we cannot be silent about things like this anymore. Because it's trauma. It's trauma that we are inflicting on our children. And we, again, have the choice to change, to be cycle breakers, to change the way we think. And it's uncomfortable. I'm telling you, it feels so uncomfortable in your body, but you can do it. You can do it and you can heal. And while you're breaking that cycle, you're healing yourself at the same time.
Yeah, it's a process, right? And I think like that's why, again, I guess great segue into like what you wanted to bring up with this resources.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be really good to just maybe get into a little bit of resources or even just like advice or general tips that people who are like finding themselves in these positions or even just wanting to unlearn and take a more, I guess you say, gentle approach in their parenting. What and where can they kind of look to for that?
I feel like, you know, there's this really great organization called the Brown Gyal Diary. Like, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they
was fully like, oh, tell me about it. I was like, my God, what
They have a wonderful mental health directory with all of these practitioners on there, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, Indo-Caribbean child and youth workers that are on there that are ready and willing to support you all through your journey. There's countless Indo-Caribbean or just Caribbean in general organizations out there. There are a lot of Caribbean serving organizations that are out there. It's just about looking for them. Like, they're not as broadly spoken about, or like a lot of people don't know about them. But it's also like having your support team and having people that you can reach out to that will just listen.
And community centers.
And yes.
Community centers are big. Like, I work closely with one, Boys and Girls, BGC East Scarborough. And a lot of their like YOWs, like the youth outreach workers, those are really good resources. Like, they have mental health professionals in their space as well. And a lot of like in more like diverse communities, like the Jane and Finch community, the like Etobicoke, Scarborough, like they are like naturally inclined to like have people of color in those spaces.
Yeah, community health centers, like those people, you'll find people there where you need support. I would look into, maybe if you're looking as a parent and you're looking into wanting to unlearn some of that parenting trauma that you might have experienced, and talk to a therapist. That therapist will help you peel the onion and figure out ways that you can do that and peel the onion for you. But I think that even like connecting with the school, connecting with parent council, if you are a person that just has general inquiries, that you're like worried about someone, that you think harm is being done to a child or youth, you can always call CAS, remain anonymous, not report. You could say, hi, I'm just calling to see if this is grounds to report, to make a report. And like, you don't have to say your name, your nothing. You could just say, okay, I know this young person, they are coming from this home where the mom is using or the dad is using, and they're leaving them unsupervised. That's like
Kids Help Phone is great.
Yeah,
too.
Kids Help Phone. Like, there are resources that are out there, and we can maybe like highlight the directory and put some in the caption, as you mentioned.
Definitely. And like just to wrap up on all of that, like I think like one of the biggest things that you push is just like breaking the narrative of like what we really asking ourselves, what is normal and what do we normalize in our community? Because we normalize it so much, we don't even realize some things that are just really not okay or not normal. And it's only when you start to do the work is when you start to realize. That's the only way that you see it. And like when you're around people that are not doing the work because they're just like not into it, it's just not a thing, they just don't have time, like they're not able to see it. And now we're the people that are like sitting down and be like, no, this is it, and this is this, and this is that. Like, I've had to like break relationships with my family because I'm like, the way that you deal with A, B, and C is like not normal, and it can get really bad. So I think like one of the biggest things is just like really asking yourself, like, how do I become, if I can, that advocate? If I have the capacity, the mental capacity to do it, how do I become that advocate in a positive way for my community? And I really think that would be like a really cool workshop. So we'll chat about that. but no, I think those are great resources, and Saira's gonna share some amazing resources that we can add to the caption. And we can add to the directory as we expand it. So thank you so much, Saira. Tiara, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to, that's kind of my last thought, but.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think this conversation was very much like a listen and learn. Cause there was a lot of things that I didn't really know about, or just generally absorbing like the experiences and things like that. So I don't have a ton to really add otherwise, but just, definitely a huge thank you to you, Saira, for sharing everything with us and just being very like open.
No, thank you. And like, I can't hone in enough. Like, we can still be Caribbean, and we can still be our Caribbean people, but we can just take out the traumatic behaviors from it, from what was passed down to us, and we can still have all of that essence within us, but just surround our children with love and care and respect, and just communicate. Yeah, thank you. And I hope you all enjoyed listening. I know this was a lot of heavy topics, but yeah, I look forward to seeing the comments and responding to everyone. And thank you again, Ashley and Tiara. Again, I can't, like, this is amazing. So
No, you're amazing, and we appreciate you as well.
So are you.
And before we go, last thing, just shout out your like social handles, your business, like how people can connect with you, and just like one last reminder on like what are your like what do you do, so people, I mean, you said it at the beginning, but so people know now at this point in the conversation
what they
like,
can look to
how
you.
can they look to you exactly.
Yeah, so my personal handle is Saira.Batasar-Johnie, and my private practice is called lotuscounseling.org. I am a registered social worker, so I do have my own private practice where you can connect with me there if you want to just chat. I don't have the traditional way of therapy. I try and just take a different, more relational approach to working with people and just getting to know people, because I feel like if we're sharing space together, you should get to know me and a little bit about me and where I come from, and then we can move through your journey together. So that is my approach. Some people like it, some people don't like it, and that's okay. You said what I do. So yes, I'm a registered social worker, and yeah.
And where do you practice out of?
So I'm virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, all my stuff is virtual, and I do offer it in person, but that's through a clinic. So yeah, you can come see me in person if you want to.
And you could just shout out the name of the clinic. I just went there, and it was amazing. So shout them out real quick.
So the health spa, it's ran by an Indo-Caribbean and a strong Indo-Caribbean woman, Sabrina. Love her, and she's really given me an opportunity to be me in the space, and I appreciate that the most about her, because she's not very like, oh, you have to be certain this way and practice this way. She's like, no, you do your thing, and I'll like.
That's beautiful, amazing. And that's very, very important. Well, thank you everybody for watching. We appreciate it, and just make sure you guys access the resources. And if you need any support, make sure you guys can connect with us through DM, anonymously, through email, any way that you like. And we're happy to connect you with anybody or any organization that you need support with. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Saira.
Yay.
Thank you, Tiara, for being part of this as well.
Yay.
Good job.